The Sweet Sound of Success show is sponsored by Powered Partners. Are you an entrepreneur looking for support for your business, solid advice, or inspiration to keep going? Then Power Partners is for you. It's a business school for entrepreneurs with live online weekly sessions and an online academy, along with an interactive community of business leaders led by the world-renowned life and business strategist Bert Oliva. See if you qualify at meetpowerpartners.com. And brought to you by Success Strategists, simple strategies that work to develop your business with flow and ease using proven strategies and the right tactics. This is the Sweet Sound of Success with Sue Wilhite, Success Attraction Expert. Jennifer Regular is the transformational author of Embrace Your Power, a healing journey of self-discovery and soul-centered empowerment coach at Lighting the Path, where she aligns visionaries with their passion and their mission to focus on the difference they want to make in their world and experience deep life satisfaction. Welcome, Jennifer.
Oh, thank you so much, Sue. It's such a joy to be here.
Well, I'm delighted that we were introduced by a mutual acquaintance and got to go, oh yeah, you're my kind of people.
Yeah, so fun.
Yeah. So the subtitle of the show is The Hero's Journey for the Entrepreneur Soul. And many people, it's unreal to me, but hey, everybody has a different life experience, as we discover on the show. The hero's journey is a structure to stories, to epic stories, to mythic stories that Joseph Campbell, who had the best job in the world as a mythologist, he discovered this structure that seemed to underlie all of these really wonderful stories. And although there are 16 separate discrete bits of the hero's journey structure, not all of them show up in all of the stories, and we're not doing all 16. I get to pick and choose. So I've chosen 5 parts out of that structure, which I think are really relevant to the hero's journey process for entrepreneurs. And they are the ordinary beginning. Nobody's ordinary. I'm sorry if you're an entrepreneur. Extraordinary is part of your subtitle. So that's just the way it is. Anyway, the ordinary beginning, what are you doing before you were an entrepreneur, if anything? And the call to action, what got you to being an entrepreneur? And sometimes, either before or after the call to action, there is one or more big hairy monsters. The big hairy monsters are things that are obstacles, objections, personal hardships that might have come up. And you get to dance with those somewhere along the line. And to help you with the big hairy monsters, most, if not all entrepreneurs, get to have allies. They get to have mentors. They get to have guides, or coaches, as they're sometimes known in our world. And those folks really help the entrepreneur. And as far as I'm concerned, you cannot succeed without some kind of ally, mentor, coach, or guide. And then there's the folks who are not necessarily allies. Joseph Campbell calls this the journey home. And in the journey home, there are people who have not been on your journey. There are folks who are not necessarily entrepreneurs. There are people who do not understand what you're doing as an entrepreneur because you have had this life experience of offering a product or service and someone has paid you for it. It's a different thing than being employed. It is a totally different experience. And once you get going on it, there is nothing to compare. And other people don't understand this. So what I like to highlight is the different ways that entrepreneurs deal with those folks who just don't get it about that. So Jennifer, what was your ordinary beginning?
My so-called ordinary beginning.
Yes.
Yes. Well, as an entrepreneur, probably like most kids, the lemonade stand, right? That's the first thing. Let's make lemonade and go and sell it. And, I got all excited about that. And even in one of the primary grades, we have bake sales, right? And then we would sell our baked goods, of course. And back then it was like 10 cents for a cookie and 15 cents for a brownie. And I would tell everyone, or you can get both for a quarter. And, there's no price difference between, there's no special, but because they just said it that way, everyone would buy two and get it for a quarter because, wow, you can get both for a quarter. That's amazing. So,
and it's easier to deal with.
Yes. And you get two things.
Yes.
How exciting is that? So there was lots of little bits growing up where I just always had amazing ideas and would go out exploring them and trying to sell things. Old books, I would go sit up on the lawn after I was done with them and have a book sale. There was just always something that I wanted to start out with. So I would say, even as a child, there was that. And growing up, even just up to age 10, I was just always very aware of society and exchanges that go on with energy and people, and very curious child I was. And that's when I first conceived of that book that you mentioned about how society determines your destiny, is what I was thinking of calling it back then at age 10.
Wow.
Just because I was really keenly aware and insightful about how people treat each other, how we can uplift each other or demean each other or even bully each other, and how many conditions were placed on how to be, who to be, what to do, and how to do it, and different status levels, and all of the different ways that were coming in from the majority or authority in society, trying to teach these kind of values in us. And it never really made sense to me because, sometimes I could see it work, but there was such a disparity between the results.
Right.
Of that, right? And so I reworked that book many times in my mind about how I was going to share that message, and just taking different experiences and observations and writing them down or just thinking about it, and had so many different chapters going on. and then felt it in that way too. Every time I tried to speak up about something, I'd be called a teacher's pet or a brainer, or, when I get excited about sharing some knowledge or the answer and just having so much joy around it, or I get so excited about things, I have incredible amounts of enthusiasm, but it would annoy people. Right. And so, I'd start having to be more quiet, or you're disturbing me, or you're bothering me, or, so then I wouldn't share as much, but I still kept to myself, and I'd go explore and I'd observe and I'd write, and I'd just kind of keep it all to myself then, right? Kind of keep it hidden.
Right. Yeah.
Yes, to knock it all, to keep it all down. And there was always also the idea that I had to prove my existence on Earth. See, my mom didn't realize she was having me till 6 months into her pregnancy. She's in her 40s, just assumed she was starting that stage of life called menopause, and didn't really think anything of missing her periods. And then when she did seem like something was going on more than what she thought, the doctor said, well, you're pregnant. And she told him to go to hell because that's not what she wanted. But she had 3 girls, and she was hoping, maybe I'd be a boy. And unfortunately for her, I wasn't. I was a girl again. And, my sisters were already 14, 18, and 20 at that time. Wow. So she's already pretty much raised her kids, but here I am. And hearing that, obviously I didn't know that right away, but I was told that later, and just felt like I always had to prove myself. So that amplified my need to do everything right, and to overachieve and overcompensate for any kind of burden that I might have placed on them. They never treated me that way, though. It was just something that I felt. But on a deeper level, on a deeper spiritual level, I also felt that I had this grand responsibility to Earth and humanity. And I was never one who wanted children and to get married, but I felt like the world was my child, that somehow I had to do so much to take care of that. And as an empath, being sensitive to other people's moods, energies, and feelings, and being in different places and feeling that kind of energy, and just being confused and overwhelmed by it all, what I was supposed to do. But even in grade 7, like those early preteen years, I remember wanting to be like a teacher or a guide. And then one teacher brought in meditation. He was doing a degree in psychology at the time, and we were grade 7 and 8 at that time. And he brought in meditation into the class, and we would practice that throughout our day. And it was amazing. And I had amazing discussions with him. I always felt, maybe it's because I was born late in life too, that I just had stronger relationships with people that were older than me, or people that were doing really interesting things like getting their psychology degree, which I later ended up doing myself, or doing this meditation, and just different things like that. Or I'd be more in touch with my supervisors rather than my colleagues. Just, I know, I was always looking ahead and looking at how people manage things, and how they're driven, and there's purpose and there's mission that supported that. And so that same teacher told me about being a guide, helped me understand I wanted to be a guidance counselor specialist. I always wanted to help people with their direction and purpose and where they were going to go, and guide that in some way, right? And so in school, I loved learning about so many different things. And then later in work, I was doing a lot of personal and professional development. And my spiritual life grew from that grade 7, 8 meditation class. And this was in the early 80s too. So, I mean, I don't even know if they do that now, or if it's grown since then. They don't have any children that go to school to find out. But learning and developing and evolving has always been a huge part in my life. And so I kept building up on that, building it up. And then unexpectedly, in a sense, I did get married. I didn't have any children, but I did get married. And it was a soulmate on a different level, on a spiritual level, one that really broke me down, and where I felt dispirited, kind of like society, but only now it's in my own little society in my home that was very fragile and volatile and hostile. And he just couldn't love me. He didn't have the capacity to love me the way that he wanted to. And so it's a very dysfunctional relationship, abusive. He had addictions and chronic pain issues and so on. And still I would try to support that and to lift him up. And, you know, and that was a lot through my earlier years too, of noticing who got scapegoated or who was left out, and just trying to lift them up in some way, and trying to help them to feel safe and to be themselves and who they are, and whether they were angry or whether they were depressed. It was always trying to neutralize that in some way. And so with this husband, make a long story short out of that, it was a 5-year relationship, but I left after a year and a half when I knew that there wasn't any continuation of that in a healthy way. And I literally just went down to the stop sign and stopped. I have no idea what I was going to do. I just knew the next step was to leave, and I didn't know where to go beyond that. And coincidentally, at the time, I worked at 2 different women's shelters, so I couldn't go to them. And so, but it helped me understand the situation I was in, because, I mean, you don't always understand or realize what's right there in front of you and what's happening to you. Anyway, it wasn't long after that started me more fully into my spiritual journey, because just after that, and happened to be on our what would have been our anniversary as well, our wedding anniversary, I was at a Wise Woman weekend, and that's where I met many different practitioners and spiritual supports. And there was a practitioner I listened to in line in the lunch line, because it was a retreat, and she was telling someone how she can get these emotional issues out of your tissues for good. Now that's the kind of thing I need, because I had also been doing a lot of counseling at that point after having this like psychology degree. And I thought, everybody comes to me for help. I didn't really feel like I had that for myself. And
I was going to mention that, here you are lifting everybody else up, and
yes. I don't want to let anyone down by saying that I'm feeling down. And,
Right.
there was that. And then, just not really sure who was strong enough to kind of handle what I felt I was going through. And so, this treatment, this integrated energy therapy treatment sounded incredible because it was going to get the emotional issues that were there out. So I had that treatment. She did a demo, and then I went on to learn from her, and I did the different levels that she offered and that. And then, of course, started teaching it myself as a master integrated energy therapist. And I also got into shamanic work. So I did a 7-year shamanic apprenticeship, which I continued to build on in that practice as well. And really getting into understanding how in our cellular memory that we hold the emotions there, and being able to release that and speak to that and do that. So I started the business, started 2 businesses before that. I was doing essential oils, selling aromatherapy products. I got into Watkins because I really liked their mission of being from the 1800s and never doing any kind of advertising other than direct marketing, which I thought was pretty cool. And then also just having always the entrepreneurial mind. So even though I went through 25 years working in social services, there was always a mission orientation that I had to why I was there and what I was going to do in that role. And at some point, it just felt like I no longer wanted to relate role to role anymore. I really wanted to connect soul to soul. And so the spiritual work and creating a practice, which I called Enlightened Wellness at the time, was going to be all around the angelic healing, the shamanic work, the integrated energy therapy, teaching those classes, offering the treatments, offering self-discovery and transformational workshops and all of that. But of course, with all of those different ideas, I got overwhelmed by it. So then there was this woman that I met at a networking event who was a coach. She did magnetic marketing mastery. Ooh. And so I thought, that sounds kind of fun. And I really liked her. And so I connected with her and said, I'd really like to take your course. And so she became not just in marketing, but a business coach and my editor and a copywriter for my website. So she was kind of an all-in-one package, right? So she became one of my major allies. And yes.
Guide all in one package. Yeah.
Absolutely. And it was her that said, so about this book that you've been conceiving since you were 10, now I'm just about 40 at that point. So almost 10 years ago. And she said, let's do your book. That's going to be your project. And then we're going to market it and you're going to sell it. I said, okay. And then, so I had to think about that. Like, what's my message? So she really helped me with messaging and understanding what it was I was wanting to put out there. And that's how it became Embrace Your Power, a healing journal of self-discovery. So it's really a pilgrimage into your heart's deepest desires. And again, having that soul connection, healing your relationship with yourself, which is the process I had been going through. Every part of my recovery, every time I went through something that supported my recovery, I wanted to turn around and teach it to somebody else because this is like the best thing ever, like sliced bread, right?
Yes. Yes, for me.
Yes. And then learning too, in that healing that we're healing all along the ancestral line. So there was a lot of healing that happened through that. But then it became time to put the business out there. And I was afraid. I was definitely afraid because I had death threats against me from my ex-husband. So how is it going to be safe for me to put my name and location out on the website and have everybody know about that? I didn't really think about it too much until it came time to actually do it because I was so into the process.
Right. And, now that's a big, hairy monster.
That's a big, hairy monster.
I don't know that I've ever interviewed somebody who was getting death threats before they were about to start their business. That's a huge, hairy monster.
A huge, hairy monster.
Wow.
Yeah, so that really held me back. And then that kind of emotion of being held back from that and being afraid also led to other deep-seated fears of not feeling good enough and feeling ashamed. And is this what I'm supposed to be doing? But I have a psych degree. Shouldn't I be using that? Like just a lot of questioning about my path and my wisdom and what was going to be safe to do, what I'm meant to do. But the true sadness, I think, the real deep-seated sadness was not being able to fulfill my mission.
Mm-hmm.
And then once I realized that, actually, there were two things. One is I was having some suicidal thoughts myself after my father died. That was a really big deal for me. It's still over 20 years later, it's still a little emotional for me because he was one of my greatest allies too. And I didn't know he was the one who lifted me up, who would always spend time with me, who would teach me things. And although he's a plumber, he was clairvoyant, so we'd have spiritual discussions. We played games together, and there was just a lot in that relationship. So it was very difficult not having that kind of support from him.
Right.
Anyway, yeah, and that kind of took me away from my train of thought there. But so yeah, the suicidal thoughts came from there because I just didn't know what my supports were going to be, right? And so but I remember being jolted awake one moment when I was doing that inner development work, done a lot of that for many, many years. And I was learning about karma, right? And fulfilling your purpose. And I thought, I'm not coming back here. Like either I get it right now and I do it now and I get my mission out there and I fulfill that. Because I'm not coming back. Like this is it. So this is kind of like pulled up my bootstraps, got it together and went to do that. But then a few years later, that's when I started the other businesses, the ones that were other people's products, right? But then back to my husband again and doing that. So there was already that seed planted back then about you're going to live out your mission in this lifetime. That's just what you need to do, right? And I would resist that still, go for the paid job. I had a government job, the best pension anywhere. And I was doing good work, having results, and I was making a difference. And still it wasn't enough. Something was missing. There was something more I had to do. I felt really constricted. And so I had to really align myself with what that was. And I kept searching and trying different roles and different ways of doing business and so on to try to find that alignment. And at some points, I had 2 stress leaves from work because I just have a complete adrenaline shutdown.
Wow.
Right. Another crash and burn kind of story a few times because I would just give so much of myself, Sue, all the time, no matter what I was doing, because of that mission of trying to save the world, right? And trying to get us to the place that I envisioned all of us to be. And so that was tough. And then, just trying to work with all of these different factors. But the strongest sense of purpose I had was what connected me to what I was truly passionate about. And I started moving from a space away from obligation to passion. And the way I see passion is pass I on. So that is our most authentic self. This is where it's safe to be completely who we are, pursuing our deepest desires and dreams, which is often about other people, right? So it's not even a selfish thing to be able to have that and to hold that, but not just to hold it, to be able to share those gifts that we've been given and really align with that. And I had a ton of loss in my life. Like by the time I was 21, there were 17 deaths of family and friends, and it just kept going and going and going from there. Then there was the husband and the dogs and the house and claiming bankruptcy and all of the things, that you wonder why I'm here still. But it was always, so why I bring up the loss is I've attended a lot of funerals and hearing people talk about what they remembered about the person that had passed on, that relationship, their spiritual energy, the spirit that they carried, right? And what they represented, who they truly were, and the gifts that they truly shared with those that were left behind. And I really internalized that. I also, because of all the loss, always prioritized my time and energy to what was most important, what was most valuable, always reevaluating my values and making sure that all of my activities, my daily activities and business activities, life activities, and so on, were aligned with that. because time is not a renewable resource. So really wanting to maximize and get it right? Accumulate a lot of good merits and karma too.
Yeah, and do, again, going back to your realization, you have a mission. You have
Yes.
a reason to be on the planet, and you've got a really clear path. And what's the word I'm looking for? You've got the tools
Yes.
to do it with. So it's like, you got to go do this.
That's right. And so that's what passion is to me, is that authentic self, your soul's expression, passing that on in this lifetime. So my passion is for people to pursue their passion, for people who are mission oriented and visionaries to be able to feel fully safe in doing that, and to gather the courage and confidence to be able to follow their heart's calling. And so it was that kind of driven mission that I held on to rather than the fear, right? Never let your excuses be bigger than your dreams, ever, right? And so that's what kept me going. And then because of all of those tools I learned through my healing journey, I was able to utilize that and be able to feel safe and to come to a place of wholeness and recognize and have full faith, which faith, if you break that up too, it's finding answers in the heart and really connecting with that and being able to move from that space. Then there is no fear. There are no hairy monsters, right? Those are all stories and images, projections and perceptions that we have. And so, that the imposter syndrome, which is deep-seated fear, and recognizing our spiritual sovereignty, which is the antidote to that, is how we can live and truly, truly, deeply live and fulfill our mission while we're here.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And so it sounds like your journey home was more interior. It was you dealing with the fears and the doubts and the imposter syndrome and who am I to ... and all of that. And so you got to deal with it by turning it around and going, how not? How do I not do this?
Right. And that reminds me too, when I about 3 years ago, I did some world travels before the world shut down. Thankfully, I got to do that. I was so grateful for it, because one of the places I visited, which was in Bali, Indonesia, I went to an ashram there, and I was there for quite a while. And Anand Krishna, another one of, I would call my allies, there was so much, it was such a deep soul awakening for me throughout the whole thing, through meditative therapy, through the chanting, through the Dharma, the yoga, everything that we learned, the Vedas and everything. But there's one thing that really stood out, and it's something that I continue to share. And it's when Anand Krishna mentioned about BCAT, become aware of your capacity, your abilities, and your potency. I was just like, your potency. We collect all these different skills and abilities, and through all the emotional upheavals we all go through, build the capacity to be able to hold it all. But our potency, that's that I that I talk about, that we're here to pass on. And I really loved that. And I've had many different, teachers and allies and mentors and coaches along the way that have always just shown up at the right times with what their gifts they wanted to share with me and others. And there's just a lot of the kind of support. We're always supported, no matter what's going on in our life, where we are, what we need to do. Someone is always there. So just being fully present, and even just knowing the next step is a bonus, and just continuing to move forward in that.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And I understand that you have a gift for my audience that is going to help them.
Absolutely. This is a guide to living your passion and purpose. So if you're on a quest to find your passion and purpose, and I'm talking about what you're most passionate about, what is your song to sing, what is your rice to cook, what is your thing that you're wanting to bring to this earth. And then the purpose is that what you're here to do, but that passion is the energy force behind it as well. So it's a guide to how to work with that, your passion and your purpose. And that's what I'd like to offer each of you.
Nice. And we'll have the links down below and in the afterward and in the show notes. So you can get that. And that is a really wonderful gift. I will tell you, of all of the events that I have hosted or promoted over the years, anything that has to do with finding your purpose has got to be the most popular thing ever. So everybody wants to know what their purpose is. Why are you here? What are you doing? Even if you think you know, it's worth doing the exercise, because every time you do it, you get another layer, you get another tool, you get another idea or sense of self in terms of how you fulfill that purpose. So I strongly recommend that you take advantage of Jennifer's gift.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. And thank you so much for being on the show and sharing your amazing journey of just breaking through all of those big hairy monsters.
I really appreciate that you have this platform for people to be able to share their stories and holding the space for that. So thank you.
Thank you. And thank you to my audience on the sweet sound of success. Are you a business owner who feels frustrated with the many tech options? Do you know how to use social media, websites, and digital business cards effectively? Millions of people just like you are searching for these answers and don't know where to turn for support. Hi, I'm Sue Wilhite, and for over 25 years, I've helped business owners just like you to discover what really works for their business, to get rid of useless tech that's draining their money, and to increase their bottom line. Schedule a free Zoom session with me at the link you see on the screen, and I'll review your business systems and suggest ways to make an immediate difference. The session is completely free, and you have no obligation whatsoever. Schedule your session now. It can change your life forever.